Hey guys, it's your boy Eli from the Geek Centurions, and I'm here with my brother Joey. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well, you know?
Oh yeah, and we're
Yeah.
here to talk about the second episode of Watchmen, HBO's new show. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands, but I'm doing them. And we're here to talk about this new episode that came out. So Joey, what do you think about this episode that just came out?
Yeah, episode 2. I am liking it a lot. Definitely continues with stuff that, the Odyssey 7 episode 1 and definitely leaving us with a lot of questions.
Yeah, we're starting off with some answers being questioned. And questions being answered. Sorry.
Yeah.
but also we're getting more questions, which is apparently a thing that Damon Lindelof is kind of known for with his shows like Lost and Leftover. So yeah, I'm liking it so far. So this episode was called "Martial Feats of Comanche Horsemanship," which is based on a painting.
Yeah, and I think you pointed out that when I was watching the episode, they clearly panned to that painting specifically.
Yeah, so a good 5 seconds. Not mad at all. No,
Yeah.
but so the episode starts off where we left off with. Actually, no, never mind. No, scratch that. The episode starts off with a very interesting thing where a German soldier is asking a woman to type down this whole line where asking the African American soldiers to come join the Germans because they know they're not being treated well in the U.S.
Yeah, and it's all set in like World War One, so
Yeah, so like if you're thinking, well, it doesn't seem right, like it's possible in World War One.
yeah. Because obviously, if it was like set in like World War Two, that's obviously like not like
Oh no,
that's not something Hitler would do.
no, he was a pure man.
He was all about that Third Reich, if you know what I mean.
It's interesting how we go into that too, but that's it starts off with him getting this letter from the German saying the dad from the past episode, that we saw in the beginning. He gets the letter from the German saying, "Come join us," and then we see this naturally transition to his son, who we later on now know is the old man that we see at the end of last week's episode.
Yeah,
And now Regina King's character, Angela Bass,
yeah,
she takes him to her bakery, and then from there, she has her little moment, her little my friend is gone, and she starts interrogating the old man, who we later find out his name is Michael, or is it Mike?
no, it's
Will.
Will, it's Will.
I'm confusing names now. Sorry. It happens. And then as we go along, we see how the rest of the police force is reacting to his murder.
Yeah.
And it's not the best way to do things.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of emotions of anger and like I want to hunt down these bastards that killed the police chief and all that stuff.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've noticed immediately is sort of more technology in the world.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of crazy kooky technology going on.
Yeah, so as there's reporters trying to find out what's going on, and they're flying in this makeshift like moth wings. That is a clear reference to the character Mothman from the book, who was part of the Minutemen.
Yeah, and I think when that happened, when we started seeing like these reporters trying to get into the crime scene because the police have blocked the crime scene off.
Mm-hmm.
Like for a second, I was like, "Is this Arthur from like The Tick? Is it
It's a different show, Joey. That's an Amazon Prime show, not an HBO show.
I know, but like I remember the cartoon, and
yeah, no, I get
they just the wings reminded me of that.
Yeah, I like how they were able to make it flap. But no, we start seeing people's reactions, and usually not a good thing. The character Red Scarce, who's clearly a Russian, and he even makes note that he's a communist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he leads the whole charge on Nixonville, which is where all these poor Caucasians are at, and so they want to go ahead. They want to go ahead and just round them up.
Yeah, because
take them away.
Yeah, because they believe that it was the 7th Cavalry that most likely committed committed the murder, and I think a lot of people kind of feel like that Nixonville, which has that giant statue of Nixon, is the place where a lot of these 7th Cavalry members are supposed
operate.
to operating. Because I think last episode, right?
Last episode, Angela Bass' character like literally just rode up there, beat a dude up, and took him into questioning, saying that he was a member of the 7th Cavalry, which he was.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. They said they all are, but he was.
Yeah. So,
so as we go along, Virginia King's character is clearly unhinged at this point. She's not having it.
Yeah, she's not well. She's definitely, traumatized by what happened to the police chief Judd, and like during she like I think she was initially kind of against like storming it, but then she gets attacked and like she just mercilessly beats a guy up. So it's
just
pretty...
she was in the moment.
Yeah,
but one thing that we didn't mention so far in this talk about the episode is that there was a moment that we learn now, one where the kids come from and the whole what is the White Knight.
Yeah. We got a flashback to what the White Knight was, and
it was during Christmas Eve. Angela Bass and her husband are just having a nice, sweet, tender moment. And then all of a sudden, some 7th Cavalry guys literally just home invade and just start shooting the place up.
Yeah.
And that's also, and Angela Bass gets shot. She wakes up to find Judd like sitting next to her in the hospital.
Yes.
Where they go over that her partner was killed, and her partner was the father of the 3 kids that she's raising.
Yeah, and they she decides to take care of them because her police partner.
Because that was the thing that you and me talked about. We talked about it. So what's up with this this couple that's raising kids that are clearly not theirs?
Yeah. I think we at the beginning we were like, well, they're probably most likely adopted because of reasons, and turns out they are adopted, kind of.
Yeah.
Because her, she's taking care of them because they were kids of her partner from the police force. So for her, that's kind of like her way of giving back in a way.
Mm-hmm. And later on, we find out more about Redfordations.
Oh yeah, they keep getting mentioned. And there's even like there's a place in the city where people like who were affected by what happened in the first episode.
Yeah, the Tulsa massacre. So, and like you were saying, that stuff happened. It's an actual thing that happened. And now and under President Redford, they started giving out these reparations.
Yeah, the reparations, or as like a lot of people, some of the characters call them Redforations. And that's sort of a place where you just like test your DNA and like they essentially give back money if you are a like relative or descendant of people that were like hurt in such a thing. So
yeah, and it's funny how I think this is kind of taking like a South Park approach where like it's painting both sides to not be both political sides not to be the greatest, because you can because in the book the U.S. was under Nixon for about a good 30 years, and that didn't end well for them.
Right.
And now it's the exact opposite, and it's not ending well for anybody. I think that's an interesting note to take. Not getting the political side, but like that's sort of like a weird thing to do, and you can clearly see how both sides are affected by such things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so from there we go in to find out that apparently the kids still have a family.
Yeah, I believe
there's some guy who I think is basically the uncle or something, a grandfather.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the uncle. I could be wrong though.
Yeah, they don't address who he is, but he's clearly family, and he's clearly not liking the idea that these kids are being raised by Angela Bass, and he even makes nods, like jabs at the whole Redfordation things, which already sets up like this is one of the big problems that we have.
Yeah,
and I'm interested to see where they take this whole Redford. It's clearly continually mentioned and I feel like if you don't do something with it, it's not gonna work. It's like that Chekhov's gun thing.
Yeah, I definitely understand that sort of sentiment. And I definitely do think that there might this probably will lead up to something, whether or not it will
Yeah, well, it's not just that. It's also one of the big reasons why for the 7th Cavalry are against the whole Redford and like a lot of the people.
Yeah,
which is interesting in my opinion, because this reparation, this Redfordations, what they're called. It sounds like a good idea on paper, but it's possibly screwing up a lot of people. Because look at the people at Nixonville. There's people in tents, which is a little detail that I didn't notice until like my second time watching it.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good part of town. It's mostly like trailer parks and stuff. So I'm assuming that like these reparations that they keep mentioning is definitely done via taxes and like government spending and all that stuff. So there's probably people that are like against that kind of stuff. So that's probably half the reason why a lot of people don't really like them.
Yeah, and so as we go along, Angela Bass sort of gets invited to go to Judd's home, where his wife is hosting this big party for Judd. And it's kind of weird how she's like the only person of color in there.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. I think you pointed that out to me. I'm like, oh yeah, that is weird.
Yeah, and there we meet John Key Jr., who is the son of a character that you kind of briefly see in the books. John Key, who's the guy who basically established the whole mass vigilante law. Like, there should be no mass vigilantism.
Right.
And clearly he's going to be a big of an important character, not just because of that history, but also because earlier in the episode there was a conversation between two newspaper reporters, I guess. No. It was a newsstand and a delivery man.
Yeah, and they were mentioning that the character was gonna
run for president against Redford.
Yeah.
And it's funny how like both those guys don't even like the candidates.
Yeah, they're just mentioning they're both shit. Nobody cares.
Yeah, and also we get to apparently there's someone who keeps buying the books.
Yeah, there's like a little girl that comes off a bus, and apparently she's really into buying all these newspapers and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's for someone. We don't know who that is probably till next episode.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah,
it's probably that lady who's in the previews is always talking about, I have a plan to save the world, and it starts in Oklahoma and stuff. But no, that stuff happens. But before we continue on, there's like this whole, they introduced this whole show that's been mentioned in the first episode. What's it called? American Hero Story.
Yeah.
And essentially, it's a story that is based on the Minutemen. And they start off with the first established hero of the Watchmen universe, which is Hooded Justice.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they go into Hooded Justice's origin, because he technically, no one knows who he really is. He's really hush hush. Let's not talk about it.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's interesting. And you have something to say, and we'll talk about that later in the spoiler section of this video.
Yeah.
And going back to Angela, she's in the party. I guess she fakes being sick.
No, I think she actually sort of faints because of all the stress and stuff from she's been handling with trying to interrogate the old man and all the stuff that's happened. So
yeah, and she takes this opportunity to go look around Jed's home, because Will mentions that he has skeletons in the closet, which for whatever reason she takes it literally.
She literally checks the closet, but I mean, obviously she's like, what is he talking about? I need to learn a bit more about this.
Yeah.
So she goes and investigates.
She finds something that rocks her to her core, that shocks her beyond belief. And we'll get to that when we get to our spoiler portion of this episode. But when she finds out about this, she goes ahead and talks to, what did I call it? Will. His name is Will.
Yeah, the old man Will.
Old man Will. again, and clearly there's a level of hostility, and then they get the call from that office that we talked about earlier that was handing out repredations, where we find out this interesting like connection between Will and Angela.
Yeah.
And again, that's gonna be in our spoiler portion. I keep saying that because we're getting close to it. And then after that, she tries to take him to the police station, handcuff him and all that stuff. But as soon as she closes the door on him, there's an Archimedes, Archie, the bird, the ship that you always associate Night Owl with, come by and pick him up with a giant magnet that caught you off guard.
Yeah, it was definitely kind of like, because he mentions a bit before the scene where he's like, I have friends in high places, and quite literally has friends in high places.
Yeah, I was like, what in the I don't know, just probably the CG on that magnet, it just looked really silly to me.
Yeah.
But then again, but at the same time, it's like hasn't been that much production of technology, so it probably would be that big and bulky. So yeah. No, and man, Joey's sick and tired right now. I gotta tell you guys that.
I mean, if anything, I'm recovering just from like being kind of sick for most of the week. So,
yeah.
I'm more or less better now.
Yeah, we it took us a while to do this recording because you were just like,
yeah. All right. It wasn't that bad, but
no,
it was certainly not great either.
It wasn't. You were dying. I saw redness in your eyes.
All right, no, that's a bit of an exaggeration.
Not the redness.
No, but yeah, no. So yeah, no, like that. That's how the episode ends. With.
But there's also the Adrian Veidt stuff.
Right. Yeah, with Jeremy Irons and his character,
who still does not confirm the fact that he's Adrian Veidt, but I'm pretty sure he's Adrian Veidt. We finally get to see his play, and it's the play like I've said it. I knew it was going to be. It was basically about Dr. Manhattan, and which it all plays around like his origin.
Yeah.
And then and as it plays around, we find out this interesting fact that. So I was wrong about his servants being robots. They're clones. They're clones.
Yeah, because all the servants look the same, and
they have different names. But when he gets rid of someone, he gives them that name again.
Yeah, he gives them the name, which I guess is tied to just the position.
Yeah, it's just the position at this point. And there's a clear sense of like time has passed because we keep getting notions of like, hey, Adrian Veidt is dead, he's gone, we're not going to see him anytime soon. But then we keep seeing Jeremy Irons, who we're all assuming is Adrian Veidt. It's like weird, but there's a sense of time. Time has went on.
Yeah, and I think it comes from like the fact that they do like another like cake anniversary thing.
Yeah, they do the whole "for he's a jolly good fellow," for he's a jolly...
which we still don't know what it's for. Like, I think some people assume it's like a birthday thing. Other people, I don't know.
Like there's been the talks about it's possibly an anniversary of the whole squid attack.
I mean, possibly.
I feel that would be the most likely, but that would be so weird to do it now.
Not when actually in that time period, but years later. Yeah, no, I get that.
Well, he's clearly all by himself. That's the weird thing.
Yeah. So it's definitely weird.
Yeah, and they even quote at the end of I want to say this is the end of an act of the play, where they go with with Dr. Manhattan says to Adrian, "Nothing really ends, Adrian. Nothing truly ends." Which is like one of the last things he says before he biggity bounces out of the universe and goes into Doomsday Clock. No, I'm just kidding. It's a different book. But yeah, I think like we said earlier, this is a good episode.
Yeah, it's a solid episode. Definitely continues the mystery of what happens to Judd, as well as
who Judd might be.
Who Judd, like, what his past entails.
Yeah.
All this sort of stuff about the old man Will and flashbacks to like his past. And
it's funny because like I found this out later on and through other videos out there that the character in the first episode they make a sense they reference the end of the song called Judd is Dead. It's summer and running out of ice, the Oklahoma play, and so essentially in the musical,
Yeah.
Judd is the bad guy, and that song is his like, oh yeah, like no one will care if I die. He does a lot of bad stuff, and now we have a Judd who's seemingly the good guy, but might not be.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like a theater thing that if you know about, for all you theater nerds out there.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting allusion to all that.
Yeah, but no, I'm with you. It's a whole. It's really one. It's another. This is a great episode. But I've heard that after watching 6 episodes, it all makes sense.
Yeah, and I figure like something like that would be true, considering like I think they started off with like 6 episodes and they're getting more now.
Yeah, and to that sense, do you think this show should just be a mini series or just like a full on season?
I don't know yet. Really depends on like the coming season episodes to come. I guess a part of me kind of just wants it to be like a one and done.
Yeah, because I don't see any. It's kind of like the book Watchmen. It shouldn't be anything to be added.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, and this isn't really anything that adds onto it. Just more like the idea of Watchmen in a different time period with different problems and different situations.
Yeah.
Because in that one, it was like nuclear war, our issues with Russia, and stuff like that. And this one's more like a modern thing. They think what involves race. I mean, whether or not you feel that is true, again, that's up to you, not me. Your opinion, my opinion. But essentially, this is probably like this is another great episode. I'm really to see where this episode goes, where the show goes. And like we said in the last one, it's been confirmed for 9. And I think that may be just it. But no, we're gonna be following all the way through.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's an interesting story. But yeah, so that's been our talk. We're gonna get into our whole spoilers talk. So if you want to know more, like we talked about basically the sum total of this show. We didn't talk about all the good stuff. But if you guys want to know more about it, go check out the show. It's really good. From whatever way you can. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but if you want to, go ahead. But yeah, it's been a good show. So we're gonna give you like 5 seconds for you guys to go check it out, and then come back to us to talk about some very important stuff that happened in our spoiler portion. Okay, so this is the spoiler portion. Joey, anything that caught your eye that you want to talk about?
I think the first one we should talk about is obviously what was in Judd's closet. It was a Klansman outfit.
Yeah, now we might be thinking that Judd was a Klansman. In other words, he might have been infatuated with the 7th Cavalry.
Yeah. Granted, I don't think it's necessarily like.
We don't know it's his.
Yeah.
That's like everyone saying we don't know it's his, but it's most likely his.
Yeah, which is definitely understandable. So it definitely adds a bit of dimension as to like, well, like was Judd secretly racist the entire time, or
was he helping the 7th Cavalry this whole time?
Who really knows? And like, which it leads to more questions as to who exactly hung him then.
Yeah,
if it's not the 7th Cavalry, if he was,
possibly involved. If Will actually hanged him.
Yeah, which would be, really weird because he's an old man.
And you see him having struggles with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So, that's like one of the big things, and, it's a whole, like, it's a big reveal for Angela, because earlier after when she wakes up from her little thing from the White Knight, you can see them bond over it. Like, not over the racism part, but they bond over what happened. They clearly want to help each other. And now she finds out this, basically what I guess would probably be the best way to talk about it is her surrogate father turned out to be like a racist.
Yeah, and considering her, like how much she hates the 7th Cavalry, Yeah, definitely a bit of a sad, sour note for her.
Oh yeah, and it's and I don't want to say that it makes sense, but just like considering how many people, considering that she's like the only, like all her friends, all the people that were there for the party in Judd's memory, for all we know, are probably 7th Cavalry, and makes it even more creepy the fact that she was the only person of color in there.
Yeah, that's certainly an interesting point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that's the one big thing that we got to talk about. We also got to talk about how Topher, who we thought was a chick.
Yeah, no, Topher's a boy.
I'm telling you, it's the long hair. Long hair. Kids with long hair always confuse me.
Yeah, we definitely got that wrong last episode. So yeah, no, Topher. Granted, that we should have known when she said Topher, but I guess we weren't paying attention that well.
I don't know. I just thought it was a boyish girl.
Fair enough. But yeah, it's definitely it definitely threw us off a bit. But you know,
yeah, and this is where we get this whole jaded idea of Topher, because he's again, he was old enough to know what happened at the White Knight. His sisters don't, especially the youngest one.
Yes.
So he's not jaded when it comes to the whole, yeah, your Uncle Judd is dead. And he's like, well, cops die all the time. And I'm like, Jesus, kid.
Yeah, and like no sense of like thinking about it for a second, be like, well, that's bad. It's like, well, I mean, he was a cop. That's what happens to cops, right?
Yeah, and like and there's this whole like jadedness between Angela and him that kind of makes me like very uncomfortable at the same time.
Yeah, so she has this whole speech about like, you know, everybody likes to believe that the world is, you know,
lollipops and rainbows.
But like, she's like,
I like lollipops.
But yeah, she's like, but we both know that, you know, the world isn't like that. It's black and white, man.
Which is like this dual meaning at the same time. It's like black and white. I'm like, okay, no shades of brown there.
All right. Okay, I get what you're going with that one. All right,
yeah,
I understand that one.
Yeah, and then it's like also like, you know, it's they're bad, they're good. There's only that, and I think that was just an interesting like dialogue between them that you probably wouldn't see as much. Apparently there's like this little toy thing that they have called Manhattan magnets or whatever.
Yeah, and they're like these like weird like Lego kind of things, but except they like kind of float
off in air. And so a lot of people have noticed this that I didn't notice until like later on, that what Topher was building is basically the castle that Adrian lives in, and it's also the same thing that Dr. Manhattan was building on Mars.
What that means, I guess we're gonna have to figure out in the following episodes.
Yeah. So, and like there's this whole like idea of like Dr. Manhattan being on Mars, which is weird because in the books he says he's gonna try to explore the universe, which is weird or like make life. But it's weird that he's kind of stick to Mars and not done anything.
Right. Yeah.
And like everyone keeps noting that Dr. Manhattan is on Mars. I'm starting to think that's not true.
Yeah. I mean, I think there was like that conversation with those two guys at the newsstand where they're definitely sort of like talking about just like government conspiracies about like how the government is keeps making the squids fall from the sky and various other conspiracies. So that's definitely like I think might be a running theme.
Yeah, it's just and especially when the book itself had a lot of conspiracies.
Yeah.
Because like this whole conspiracy of who killed the comedian, and now we're having this whole conspiracy of like who killed Judd. Is there something going on with the government? Is there something going on with Adrian?
Yeah,
and that's where we're going with the conclusion that something's going on. But yeah, another thing that I think I really want to talk about real quick is the play, the Dr. Manhattan play.
Yeah,
which is where we find out that everyone's like a clone. Clearly, I mean, yeah, Adrian Veidt's up to something, but he's really keen on the whole creation of Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, because that whole sequence we see in the show at the moment was just like his origin story.
Yeah, and he's quoting stuff that happened, and he's clearly interested in the whole watch thing, which is like a motif in the book. Yeah, but it's one of the things that sort of in a way helped bring Dr. Manhattan back because before he died, he was thinking about the whole repairing a watch.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's how he. It's implied that's how he came back. It's been a while since I read the book. I'm sorry, but like from there, we get the recreation, and that's how we get also introduced to the whole clones because he charged the motherfucker. He burned that dude to.
Yeah, I know. He definitely burned one of his clone butlers.
Yeah,
and it was pretty gruesome.
Pretty gruesome, and you were laughing at the whole Dr. Manhattan reveal when he came down from the sky.
Yeah, it's just because like it's just a dude painted blue with like a little black mask on, and of course like he is naked, so you get some good
blue dick.
Yeah, which I don't know. Personally, it looked kind of like it looked kind of like prosthetic to me, which is like weird. Although, like, I think the fact that, like, you mentioned that they're clones, it's entirely possible that, like, they don't actually have, like...
Yeah, because, you know, maybe that's how clone works. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, that's how it works on the Watchmen universe. That's how clones are.
Yeah, they just haven't figured out how to put Yeah. No, and I think the other thing the other show that we saw was the whole American Hero story, which is detailing, again, the whole... history of the Minutemen and specifically the first hero, Hooded Justice. And you noted something that I didn't catch the first time watching.
Yeah, I noted two things. The first one is the more like bigger thing that I noticed was the whole fact that like the way the sequence is shot and like reminds me of like the Watchmen movie made by Zack Snyder.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of slow-mo shots. There's a lot of gratuitous violence, various other things, and to me, like I don't know whether or not like that idea of like making the American Hero story bit look similar to the Watchmen movie was intentional or not.
Yeah, it's weird how I think it's weird. Like you say that like, they're trying to make fun of the film, or like this is what people think happened, but this is what really happened, kind of stuff.
Yeah. Like I don't know, like if it is necessarily like mocking the Zack Snyder film, being like, boy, isn't this dumb looking? Or...
Yeah, because when you said that, I noticed they mostly in the lighting.
Yeah,
because a lot of Zack Snyder films are like that sort of mute gray.
Yeah,
especially when it comes to Watchmen.
Yeah,
and like here, instead of being mute gray, it's the exact opposite. It's big, bright, and colorful, like super bright.
Yeah. But yeah, that's sort of like my thing. Like, I'm not saying that like they're like trying to mock it, but
there's a clear like connection.
Yeah, there definitely seems like there's a clear connection to the Watchmen movie. Now, whether or not like I said before, like if they're mocking it or if it's like a homage or like this weird meta joke, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
If we see more of the American Hero story stuff within the show itself,
yeah, and I think it's implied because there's a character that looks kind of like Night Owl, but he's young, so I'm like, it's probably the young Night Owl, and so they're gonna go more into this stuff. And one thing that that caught our eye was the whole the rating system and the whole this show contains.
Yeah. That was the second thing I noticed, and I mentioned to you after I was finished watching it. There's like this whole sequence of the rating system for like the show, and like it was like rated X, and it was like these gratuitous violence and like sexual imagery and like
misogyny. It's a lot of stuff that would trigger a lot of people.
Yeah, because
like there's something in each category that might trigger somebody.
Yeah, it was a bunch of like listing off a random bunch of stuff like that, which I thought was like really interesting. Yeah, like just for
like what's the level of censorship that we have in this show?
Yeah, like what kind of like society creates like this huge like X rating for a show, like and all that. So it's definitely like really interesting to me.
Yeah, because I think it's 2019. We're basically used to all that stuff, especially when it comes to our media. But I think because like there wasn't any progression in any form or way, they've kind of like halted in their exposurism, I guess.
Yeah, possibly.
Because like it wasn't until like for example the video game rating system we didn't get M until Mortal Kombat came in and did like a lot of the bloody stuff. We didn't get like a PG-13 until like what, Indiana Jones 2?
Yeah, Indiana Jones 2. I think Red Dawn was like the first PG-13 movie as well.
Yeah,
possibly. But yeah, no, it's definitely interesting to me. Definitely interesting to me.
Yeah, and that I think that whole I think there's gonna be a whole play into like the whole old school heroes and what's going on with the new ones and stuff, like how we imagine these old heroes were, but in reality, this is kind of like what we led up to.
Yeah,
because a lot of the Minutemen stuff was like kind of lighthearted at the same time, but there was a lot of dark elements that were like, holy, and like we just progressively got darker.
Yeah.
And let's see, what else was there to talk about? Oh yeah, Angela's and William's like relationship.
Yeah, like I believe she was able to get a DNA sample off of him because he drank from a cup, and she used that cup, swabbed the DNA off, and then later on she gets the results, and it turns out that Will is Angela's grandfather,
which just catches her off guard, and it's weird. And you mentioned this to me earlier. Oh right, because you were like, "Oh right, she doesn't know anything about her family."
Yeah, because like she only knows that of her mom and dad.
Yeah,
and that she was, born in Vietnam or whatever, and it's certainly like a interesting like plot twist kind of, and it definitely sort of ties it, just sort of like ties their characters together, and kind of just makes you want to like realize, like, okay, so how exactly did this all happen, kind of thing.
So. We also not forget to mention that they also talked about this other thing, that Angela might have another relative alive aside from her who's a grandfather.
Yeah, because I believe the call mentions that
there were 2 descendants.
Yeah, he has like 2 living descendants, and she's like, he obviously just says her name just to like be interested, like just to figure out exactly who they are. So like she comes up. But like they don't mention the other like living descendant who might play a role later on in the series. That's granted, we don't know that, but I assume that the fact that that's brought up. Yeah, there's gonna be some clear connection between each of the characters, and but no, she's clearly eligible for Redford. But it also reveals that she is clearly eligible for Redfordations. And we know that because when the uncle or whatever his relationship is to the kids shows up, he mentions that, he'll leave if you give him some of that Redfordation money. And he makes a slight comment that it must feel nice to have that sort of luxury that I don't get to have because of what I am and all that stuff. Yeah. Although granted, I feel like the money she does get, if she does get Redfordations, I think comes from the fact that like more from like what happened to her during the White Knight, not necessarily that. Yeah. She's like a descendant of like someone who was a part of the.
Yeah, well, because she didn't know.
Yeah, she didn't know that, so.
But she is eligible now.
Yeah, like whether or not that's actually important, I mean, probably not, but
Well, like when we said, Redfordations are a big thing for the 7th Cavalry and a lot of people because there's the people protesting them outside the office.
Right, yeah.
Sorry, just take a quick sip there.
Right.
Now, but what else happened in the show that we can talk about that we feel should be in the spoiler session?
I don't know. I feel like, at least for me, I feel like I got into everything that I wanted to talk about. That was spoilery.
Yeah. We're having this sort of weird thing where like clearly some people think that it's gonna go this way, but it seems like it's not. Right. Especially because this show has a lot of gray.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't paint anyone in a positive way. It doesn't paint anyone as too bad, but doesn't like it. Everyone is a shade of gray. which is why I mentioned earlier about the whole black-white thing, because that's how it is. Because that's how it is for them, but in reality, the world is a shade of gray.
Yeah, I definitely understand that.
Yeah, and so I think we're gonna get more into that because there's clearly something going on. Vight's up to something, and there's someone who's interested in all the news.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like, I think I said before, like there's a lot of there's questions that were answered from episode 1, but there is definitely a huge surrounding mystery going on, and that's probably gonna be the crux of this whole season.
Yeah, and I'm so down to see where else this goes, but I think that's where we're gonna have to stop now because there's really nothing else we can talk about.
Yeah, I feel like we've covered all the stuff we thought wanted to cover.
Yeah. Oh, Angela gets the paper now. The watch over this boy, the whole paper, the letter that her great grandfather now had.
Right, the letter from the...
In which I feel that will play an important role at this point now.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah, but no, this has been a good episode. I feel like if it's one of the things where like I think this worked would a lot better if I binged it, but having a show that goes on this like week by week is probably the best at this point because it gets interesting as we go along.
Yeah, I definitely understand that.
Yeah. And Damon Lemanoff is basically wrote all of the episodes so far. So I'm interested to see how all that plays around. Yeah,
I am also interested as to see where the show goes.
Yeah. So I think that's about it. I got nothing else to say. You have anything you want to add to?
No, I feel like I've touched on everything I wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that sums this all up. But, you guys can catch us for the next week's episode, which is coming out later this week. We always make sure to bring you guys our thoughts on the film. I'm going to try to see if I can get more of the other guys to get in on this. Like Kelvin and some of our other pals.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, that'd be
it'd be cool to have like all of our thoughts and reactions. I think we can probably like milk this for a very long time. Not like that, but so it's been this has been the Geek Centurions. Be sure to follow us on Castbox, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Pandora. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Twitter's coming up, but we're working on that. But it's coming up. Okay, and please support us on Patreon. That is like the big thing we want you guys to know. Please support us in making our show better than it can be, all the way to where it needs to be. And this has been my little good brother Joey.
Yep.
And your boy, it's been him, and your boy Eli from the Geek Centurions. And this has been our episode 2 review of The Watchmen. I keep forgetting. It's a long title. Martial feats on Comanche horsemanship. That's a long title for a painting.
Yeah, paintings have long titles sometimes.
Yeah, they do. It's just that pretentious as an art. No, but that's been us, the Geek Centurions. And hope you guys check us out next time. It's been Eli signing out. Peace.